You have 47 drafts, a notes app full of half-written captions, a folder called ideas with more files in it than your entire published work combined, a video you recorded once, watched back and deleted before anyone saw it, a product page you built and never linked it, an account you made and never posted from. You tell yourself it is not ready, you tell yourself you are still refining it. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right moment, the right angle, the right version of yourself who finally feels qualified enough to hit publish. Here is what is actually happening. It is not that the idea isn't ready. It is that you are protecting something. And it is not your reputation. It is not your time. It is something much older, much quieter, and much harder to notice. A mechanism running in the background of your brain that has nothing to do with your idea's quality, and everything to do with keeping you safe from a verdict you haven't heard yet. There is a name for this, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it in your own drafts folder. In 1978, psychologists Stephen Berglas and Edward Jones ran a study at Duke University. It exposed something strange about how people protect their self-image. Participants were given a set of problems to solve. Some of the problems were solvable, some were secretly impossible, but every participant, regardless of which problems they actually got, was told the same thing afterward: you succeeded. Then came the twist. Before second similar test, each participant was offered a choice between two drugs. One was described as a performance enhancing, the other was described as a performance inhibiting. It would actually make them do worse. You would expect almost everyone to choose the drug that helps them. That's not what happened. A significant number of participants, especially those who suspected their first success had been lucky rather than earned, deliberately chose the drug that would hurt their performance on purpose before they would even take in the second test. Why would anyone sabotage themselves on purpose? Because if they take the enhancing drug and still fail, that failure means something. It says this is your ceiling, this is what you are actually capable of. But if they take the inhibiting drug and fail, the failure means nothing. They have a built-in excuse. The drug takes the blame. Their actual ability stay untested, protected, is still theoretically limitless. Psychologists call this self-handicapping, and you've been doing a version of it for years. Every unpublished draft, every unfinished product, every idea you keep refining instead of releasing, that's your performance inhibiting drug. Except your version doesn't require a pill. It just requires never finishing. It is why your brain built this strategy in the first place. In 1979, Daniel Kahneman and Emma Tversky demonstrated something that reshaped how we understand risk. Losses hurt roughly twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. Losing $50 produces more pain than finding $50 produces pleasure. This isn't a personality trait. It is a default setting in the human brain, and it applies to more than money. It applies to identity. Right now, your unpublished idea exists in a state of pure potential. Unpublished, it could be brilliant. It could be the thing that changes everything. It has never been rejected, criticized, ignored, or compared to anything real because it has never left your head. The moment you publish it, that infinite potential collapses into one finite measurable outcome. A number of views, silence in the comments, a single sale, or none. Loss aversion means the possible pain of the number outweighs the possible pleasure of a good one, even when the math says the upside is bigger. So your brain does irrational feeling thing with irrational math. It protects the fantasy by refusing to test it. As long as the idea stays unfinished, you can't lose. You also can't win. But losing was always going to feel worse. So your brain doesn't calculate it as a fair trade. It just says no. This isn't a character flaw. It is a very old piece of software built for a world where being wrong in public actually costs you something. Status, belonging, safety. It's still running the same protection program on laptop with a publish button that costs you nothing at all. There's a second mechanism making this worse. It comes from a 2011 study by Michael Norton, Daniel Motion, and Dan Ariely. They had participants build a piece of IKEA furniture, a plain storage box themselves. Then they asked those same participants in a separate group who were shown an identical already assembled version how much they would pay for it. The people who built it themselves valued it about 63% higher than the people who saw the finished version. Same box, same material, same result. The only difference was effort and ownership. Researchers call this the IKEA effect. We overvalue what we build in direct proportion to the labor we put into it, even when an outside observer would rate it the same as anything else on the shelf. Your unpublished idea has had months, maybe years of labor put into that no one else has ever seen. In your head, it isn't just an idea. It is every version you rewrote, every angle you considered, every 2 a.m. stations where you almost hit send. To you, it is priceless. The world, the moment it becomes real, it is just one more thing on the shelf. Judge it the same as everything else, regardless of how much invisible work went into it. That gap between what it's worth to you and what it be worth to a stranger scrolling past in 3 seconds, That's exactly what keeps it in the drafts folder. Publishing doesn't just risk rejection, it risks a demotion from priceless to ordinary. And some part of you would rather keep it priceless and hidden than ordinary and unreal. Now the obvious objection. What if it is actually not good enough yet? Here is a problem with that sentence. Not good enough yet implies a finish line, a specific identifiable point where the idea becomes ready. Ask yourself honestly, can you name that point? What does it look like? How will you know when you've reached it? You can't answer that because it doesn't exist. Now ready yet isn't a diagnosis of the work. It is a self-handicapping strategy token dressed up as a quality control. Real readiness is not a feeling you arrive at. It is a decision you make while the feeling is still absent. And there is one more thing working against you the longer you wait. In 1920s, psychologist Bluma Zeikernick discovered that people remember unfinished tasks far more vividly than completed ones. Waiters in her studies could recall the details of an in-progress order long after they had forgotten one that had already been paid and closed. An open loop occupies mental space that a closed one doesn't. That idea sitting in your draft isn't just costing you the money it might have made. It is running quietly in the background of your mind every single day unfinished, which is exactly what want to leave you alone, and exactly why finishing it, not perfecting, is the only thing that actually turns it off. Think about the specific one, not the idea in general, the actual one. The post you wrote and deleted before anyone read it, the page you built and never linked it, the thing you almost sent then didn't, then told yourself you'd revisit when it's better. You still think about it. Be honest, you thought about it before this video even started. Somewhere out there, someone with the worst version of that exact idea published it 8 months ago. It is not better than yours, it is just finished, and a finished beats better every time because better doesn't exist yet and finished already does. Your first dollar was never actually about the dollar. A dollar is just the proof, the smallest possible unit of evidence that the idea survived the contact with the outside world and it didn't disappear. Right now, you have 0 pieces of evidence, not because you lack the ability to earn it, but because you have never let the idea to be tested in a way that could produce any evidence at all. No evidence is not neutral. It is not a pause, it is a permanent 0, protected on purpose by part of you that would rather stand defeated than find out. You don't need the better idea. You have it already, sitting in the folder, fully built in every way except the one that counts. Publish the unfinished thing this week, not the perfect version, the honest one. Let it be judged, let it be ordinary if it has to be. An ordinary thing that exists will always out-earn a brilliant thing that doesn't. The first door isn't the reward for finally being ready. It is what happens the moment you stop protecting the idea from the only thing that was ever going to make it real.